Welcome to Axis of Truth. I'm Emily Schrader, and today we're on the heels of a horrific terror attack in Australia against the Jews and a wave of chaos across the world as well. All this as the Jewish community globally begins Hanukkah, which should be a time of joy and of light. Now, don't get me wrong, today we'll talk about the good news this week, but not before I break down some of the most pernicious lies that we're hearing about the Jewish community first. So to kick things off, Australia. Now, as we now know, two Islamist terrorists believed to have associations with ISIS attacked a Jewish community Hanukkah event with thousands of people at Bondi Beach in Sydney on Sunday. At least 16 have been killed, including children and Rabbi Eli Schlanger, and dozens more have been injured. The terrorists were able to fire more than 70 shots at the crowd before the Australian police apprehended them. And in the midst of all this, an unlikely hero emerged. Ahmed El Ahmed, an Arab Muslim himself, hid behind a car behind one of the shooters and jumped out to tackle him, disarming the terrorist before dropping the weapon and putting his hands up in order to avoid police mistakenly thinking that he was one of the terrorists. Now, in the process, he was shot 2 times and he's now recovering in the hospital. But this triggered a sort of bizarre social media argument over the weekend that I think needs to be addressed. Now, as I saw countless Israelis and Jews celebrating the heroism of Ahmed, I saw just as many, if not more, pro-Hamas accounts claiming that Jews/Mossad/Zionists, etc., are mad because a Muslim stopped the terror attack. This is colossally stupid and displays the profound ignorance of these baboons for several reasons. First off, it's simply not true. I haven't seen Israelis who were upset that it was a Muslim who saved lives. I did, however, see countless anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists who were trying to claim that this terror attack was a false flag attack and then using the fact that the hero was a Muslim as somehow evidence that he foiled this Mossad attack, because no Muslims work for Mossad, am I right? The ignorance of these people is truly mind-boggling, and it is yet another exercise in deflection and a failure of many in the Muslim community who are fomenting these conspiracy theories to take responsibility for the fact that, yet again, there has been a savage, barbaric terror attack against Jews in the name of Islam that's been fueled by over 2 years of outlandish disinformation about Israel and Gaza that's been permitted by the Australian government to be freely proliferated through blatantly anti-Semitic rhetoric. See for yourself. But almost as insane as the conspiracy theories is the insinuation that Jews somehow don't think Muslims can be heroes or good people, which brings me to the second reason that this debate is dumb. As we saw on October 7th, Israeli Muslims, which make up nearly 20% of our citizens, were also viciously targeted by Hamas and slaughtered the same as Jews. Some of them were even kidnapped and held hostage. Israeli Muslims have been victims of Islamist terror throughout Israel's history, and they've also been, in many cases, heroes fighting against it. Many Arab Israelis took action on October 7th, risking their own lives to save their Jewish compatriots from the Nova Festival and the kibbutzim. In some cases, they even diverted Hamas terrorists by misleading them in Arabic. Arab Muslims fight in the IDF and serve loyally in Gaza, fighting against Hamas and the terror that harms their families too. We aren't surprised as Israelis at the fact that there are heroic Muslims, so why should anyone else be? Incidents like the Sydney Hanukkah attack aren't about Muslims. They're about Islamists who believe in an ideology of Islamic supremacy. And that is why they build conspiracies for the terrorists who do actually commit heinous acts of violence in the name of their religion. Finally, this debate is absurd because the attack itself was carried out by Islamist terrorists. Again, In fact, in the past 30 years, approximately 95,000 terror attacks have been committed by Islamists or Marxist Islamists. There's no denying that this is a problem, and it's a problem that harms Muslims too. In fact, they're usually the victims of such Islamist extremism. So, enough with this stupidity. The terror attack at Bondi Beach was horrific. And it is true that the fact that a Muslim man intervened to heroically save lives does not negate the fact that yet another terror attack was carried out in the name of that Islamist cause. But we have no problem applauding the courageous heroism displayed by Ahmed al-Ahmed in this horrible event, nor recognizing that many Muslims are like him too. Enough. Now let's discuss some of the biggest stories this week that you need to know about. First off, the 83% myth. Now, one of the claims that is continuing to rise in popularity is that, according to IDF reports, 83% of the casualties in Gaza are civilians. This is something that has been parroted around by mindless morons like Anna Kasparian and all her mentally challenged ilk.
So Israeli papers got a hold of the IDF's internal data in regard to civilian casualties in Gaza. And their own data indicates 83% of people slaughtered in Gaza, 83% are civilians.
And also picked up by sources like The Guardian, which presented it as hard evidence of Israeli malice in Gaza, when in reality, it's a case study in what happens when journalism decides to become a political project. The reality is that this statistic isn't true at all, and I know because I've actually read many of the source documents for this ridiculous claim. So let's break it down a little bit more. First, I have to preface this all by saying it is impossible to produce accurate fatality counts in real time during an active war. Every military expert knows this. Hamas now claims that 62,000 people have been killed in the Gaza war. They do not report that any of them are combatants. And they include natural deaths as well as Gazans killed by their own failed rockets. They also don't allow anyone to verify anything. On the other side, Israel reports that at least 22,000 combatants have been killed, and an additional 2,100 have been killed since March 2025 alone. If you simply do the math, even using the Hamas inflated totals, the civilian to combatant ratio is under 2-1. That's far below the ratios of 3-1 or 5-1 recorded in U.S. campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan. So already this whole genocide narrative is falling apart. So where does this 83% claim come from? It comes from an IDF document listing about 8,900 known Hamas operatives from before the war that the IDF has confirmed they killed. It is not a list of all combatants. It only denotes names that Israel knew prior to October 7th. It also doesn't include anyone from Islamic Jihad or from other Gaza terror groups, nor does it include the more than 15,000 new Hamas recruits that joined after October 7th. It also doesn't include Hamas leaders, nor does it include the thousands of civilians who actively participated in combat, which we know took place because we saw it ourselves during the thousands who invaded during the October 7th massacre. Now, despite all this, The Guardian then makes the absurd claim that anyone who was not on that pre-war list must therefore be a civilian. That's not analysis. This is a total misunderstanding of war. Many terrorists died in tunnels. Many died in collapsed buildings. Many were killed in close quarters battles where there's no body to recover and no name to record. And on top of all of this, the IDF has utterly rejected the Guardian's claim and said that the numbers they printed don't reflect any data in their systems. The truth is simple. The 83% claim isn't journalism. It's propaganda focused on a selective data point, named combatants in Hamas prior to October 7th, and then uses it to manufacture this false moral narrative. And it does so by applying a standard of warfare that isn't applied to any other war in history, all for the purpose of falsely accusing Israel of having 83% civilian casualties. And now a little bit more happy story, at least for us. An Iranian professor at the University of Arkansas who loves the Islamic Republic has been removed from her leadership position after a series of revelations showed that she praised the Islamic regime in Iran, supported a convicted regime murderer, and even used official university letterhead to do it. Shireen Saidi, who taught political science and directed the university's Middle East Studies Center, has come under intense scrutiny for her public statements and actions linked to supporters of the regime. Now, documented posts show that she's praised Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic regime, including messages in which she defended him in response to me, after the regime issued statements calling for violence against Israel. She also repeated regime talking points in her personal posts, framing Israel as a genocidal state, while, of course, expressing affection for a dictator responsible for mass repression and global terror activity. But it was another discovery that caused even greater outrage. She signed a letter supporting Hamid Nouri, a former regime official who was convicted in Sweden for his role in the 1988 mass execution of political prisoners. In that case, Nouri was found guilty of participating in the torture and execution of thousands. Records show that Saidi signed this letter using official University of Arkansas letterhead, of course, giving the false impression that her support was in some way representative of the institution itself. This was widely seen as an abuse of her position and a misuse of public resources. Now, she also faces allegations that she's misrepresented elements of her academic background with inconsistencies in her professional credentials. Now, the university has confirmed that she has been removed from her directorship after these issues came to light, but she remains a member of the faculty, which isn't good enough. Iranian dissidents and human rights activists, including myself, have sharply condemned her actions. They're arguing that her behavior reflects a pattern of regime sympathizers using Western academic institutions to legitimize the Islamic regime and to whitewash the crimes of individuals like Hamid Nouri. Her public praise of Khamenei and her support for a convicted regime executioner should obviously raise national security concerns in the United States. This is not merely a matter of a controversial opinion. It's not a free speech issue. When a US based educator uses her position and her university's name to advocate not only for a hostile regime, but for a convicted perpetrator of mass murder, it becomes a question of national security. It's time for Shireen to face deportation back to the regime that she loves so much. The incident just goes to show how regime propaganda can infiltrate American institutions very easily when proper safeguards fail. And it shows why removing her from her position was not only appropriate, but necessary. Now, one of the most repetitive and pernicious accusations that's leveled against Israel throughout this war is that Israel is targeting journalists. From commentators to human rights groups to some major news outlets, the claim has been made that hundreds of journalists have been killed by the IDF as a matter of policy, and that this somehow proves that Israel seeks to silence the media. But a new study has shattered that narrative and exposed how misleading it has become. According to new research published by the Meir Amit Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center last week, the majority of those alleged journalists killed in Gaza were either affiliated with terror organizations or operatives themselves. The study examined the identities of 266 individuals who have been reported as media workers or journalists that died during the Gaza war. Now, of those 266, at least 157 were found to be operatives or at least affiliated with terror groups such as Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, clearly indicating that they were not neutral observers or press. That means that roughly 60% of the people, just that we can confirm, who were labeled as journalists were in fact connected to violent terror organizations, not independent reporters trying to cover the story of what's happening in Gaza. Now, these findings are important because they show how easy it is for terrorist combatants to use the label of journalist as cover for their military or propaganda, in some cases, role. It's also something that we saw on October 7th with numerous journalists, alleged journalists, taking part in the massacre itself. Now, that said, real journalists have been killed in this war, and that is a tragedy. Media workers daily put their lives on the line to report from active combat zones, and their loss is real, and it matters. But the factual reality is this. The loss of life in a war zone, in and of itself, doesn't prove the targeting of journalists by the IDF. What makes this study significant is that it exposes the monolithic claims as misleading. When individuals working for or with terror groups are counted as journalists without disclosure of their affiliations, it distorts the picture. It creates a narrative in which Israel is portrayed as systematically targeting the press, when in reality, many of those killed were engaged in propaganda or even offensive operations on behalf of these armed terror groups. Now, as a journalist myself, the distortion of facts does real damage to the cause of press freedom itself, because it makes every journalist in a war zone more vulnerable when combatants disguise themselves as members of the press. In a war where information is weaponized and propaganda runs rampant, the public deserves accurate context. And what this study makes clear is that labeling every media worker killed in Gaza as a victim of targeting by Israel is simply not supported by the evidence. And with all of that settled this week, I want to shift gears a little bit and take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly stories of this week. The good this week comes from a place the Islamic regime in Iran works desperately to control, the holy city of Mashhad. And yet even there, even inside a mosque, the regime couldn't silence the public. At the memorial service for Khosrow Ali Kurdi, the human rights lawyer who died after months of pressure, interrogation, and threats from security forces, mourners did really what was the unthinkable. Inside the mosque itself, they chanted "Long live the Shah," an open declaration of support for Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. Take a look. Now, hearing monarchist chants in a religious institution inside Iran is almost unprecedented in today's Iran and has shattered one of the regime's most aggressively protected red lines. After the ceremony, security forces did move in. They arrested Ali Kurdi's brother, along with several very well-known dissidents who attended and took part in these protests, who have also been targeted repeatedly for their opposition to the Islamic Republic. Their crime was simply chanting for the return of the Shah and honoring a lawyer killed under state pressure. But the regime's crackdown isn't succeeding because outside the mosque, a large protest erupted in the streets of Mashhad, where crowds once again chanted for the crown prince and against the dictatorship. Videos shared online show Iranians shouting the same monarchist slogans heard inside the mosque, proving the message had already spread far beyond the memorial. At the same time, strikes continued across the country, including steelworkers, teachers, and transport workers, all signaling a public that has reached a breaking point with tyranny and economic collapse. From the mosque to the streets, Iranians are increasingly claiming their future, and they're doing it together louder than the regime can silence. This is the only way for the Iranian people to reclaim their country from the mullahs in power. Now, for the bad story this week, we need to talk about a stunning development in the Gaza war that exposes how Hamas has manipulated human suffering to score political points. Shocking, right? A reporter and activist from Gaza released footage last week of a warehouse under the Gaza Ministry of Health stocked with tons of baby formula and nutritional drinks meant for infants and young children that was never distributed to Gaza families. This wasn't a mere storage facility, it was a stash of infant food hid away during a supposed famine. The claim is simple and damning. Hamas deliberately hoarded these supplies in order to worsen the humanitarian crisis and to bolster its narrative that Israel is starving Gazan children. The terrorist group stored the formula at the height of the food shortages several months ago, leaving babies without essential nutrition, all while publishing images of starving families in Gaza all around the world. Now, of course, this strategy allowed Hamas to fuel international outrage and pressure Israel, even as it retained control over aid and who could access it. And why? Because Hamas wanted to force the return of UNRWA's aid distribution system because UNRWA works with Hamas. All this while they were violently threatening the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which was the alternative aid distribution organization that was designed to bypass Hamas control. Now, this is a calculated move that puts civilian lives, including the lives of infants, at risk in order to manufacture a political narrative. Whether or not one gives Israel the benefit of the doubt on how supplies are distributed or if enough aid went into Gaza, there is now evidence that Hamas has been part of the problem and not a victim of it. Once again, we see that Hamas is willing to sacrifice the lives of infants in Gaza for their genocidal, Jew hating cause. And finally, the ugly story this week, which is not only ugly but particularly heinous, a story that reveals the depths of barbarity that Israel is up against. The family of Noa Marciano, the 19-year-old soldier kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th, has released new details about how she died in Gaza, and what they have learned is almost too cruel to comprehend. According to the information shared with her family, Noa was wounded but alive when she was kidnapped and taken to a hospital in Gaza. Now, she was in the care of people who were supposed to save lives, but instead of treating her, the medical staff killed her. They injected air into her veins, a method that causes a fatal embolism, and they did it intentionally. They signed her death warrant inside a clinic that was meant for healing. And this wasn't a death in the middle of battle or a stray bullet, but a calculated execution that was carried out by medical personnel who used that training to kill a wounded hostage. I mean, imagine the level of dehumanization of Jews for a doctor to do such a thing. Now, her family also says that her body was kept in the same building for days after, before being moved and left in the open as fighting in Gaza intensified. Even in death, she was used as a tool of war, with Hamas falsely claiming that she was killed in an IDF airstrike. And how do we know this? Well, because Hamas savages filmed the murder and sent a video of Noa Marciano dying to her father via telegram, a fact he revealed only this past week. This is the ugly reality of Hamas's tactics. They not only murder, they also corrupt the most sacred spaces in society, like hospitals, and turn clinics into killing rooms. A doctor violated his own Hippocratic oath to murder an innocent hostage. And then she was used as a negotiating pawn to torture her family. Now, according to reports, the family of Noa shared these details now because they believe it's important that the world understands exactly what was done to her, what was done to all the hostages, and to ensure that no one calls these acts anything other than what they are: savage barbarity. Well, that's it for this Hanukkah week on Axis of Truth. We'll be back soon with more interviews and more stories. I'm Emily Schrader. Be sure to follow me on social media, Emily K. Schrader or Emily in Tel Aviv. Thanks for watching and see you next week on Axis of Truth, only on JNS.